Commander Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the UES Mercy, staring at the tactical display with growing unease. The distress signal pulsed steadily, originating from a research station on Kepler 186 that had gone dark 3 days ago. Standard procedure said to wait for backup, especially this far out on the frontier. But something about this felt wrong. "Status report," she commanded, her voice cutting through the bridge's tense atmosphere. Lieutenant Rivera's fingers danced across his console. "Still no response to hails, Commander. Scanning shows minimal power signatures, but life support systems appear functional. I'm detecting multiple biosignatures, and they're not all human." Sarah's jaw tightened. The station housed 32 researchers studying local flora. There shouldn't be any non-human biosignatures. Not out here, not after the next quarantine. "Major Taurus, prep your Marines. Full combat loadout." She turned to her XO. "Mason, you have the bridge. If anything bigger than us shows up, you jump immediately. Don't wait for orders." "Commander?" Mason stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The Nexa quarantine protocols are clear. If there's even a chance they're involved." "Then those researchers are already dead," Sarah finished. "But we need to know for sure. And if there are survivors..." She left the rest unsaid. They both knew the protocols. They both knew what finding Nexa meant. The shuttle ride down was silent. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from Taurus Marines, their fingers resting near triggers, armor gleaming under the shuttle's harsh lighting. The Nexa had earned their reputation as the galaxy's apex predators. Entire colonies had fallen to their raids, leaving nothing but bones and blood-streaked walls. The quarantine had been humanity's only defense, sealing off their section of space, shooting anything that tried to cross the boundary. But that was 15 years ago. There hadn't been a confirmed Nexa sighting in over a decade. The station's landing pad was intact, though Sarah noted deep gouges in the metal claw marks, each as wide as her arm. Taurus team moved with practiced precision, securing the perimeter while Sarah accessed the external terminal. The door slid open with a hiss of stale air. "Motion sensors are picking up movement, 2 levels down," Taurus reported. "Multiple signatures, moving fast." Sarah nodded, drawing her sidearm. "Remember, we're here for survivors first. Don't fire unless..." A scream echoed through the station, high-pitched, terrified, human. "Move," Sarah ordered, and they charged forward, boots thundering on metal grating. The station's emergency lights cast everything in a bloody red glow, shadows dancing as they descended. The screaming grew louder, accompanied by sounds that made Sarah's skin crawl, chittering, growling, the screech of claws on metal. They burst into the station's main lab, and Sarah's world tilted sideways. A massive Nexa warrior, easily 3 meters tall, its iridescent scales gleaming, stood surrounded by broken equipment and shattered glass. But it wasn't attacking, it was defending. Behind the Nexa, huddled in a corner, were children. Not human children. Their skin was covered in fine scales, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Young Nexa. And charging toward them were 3 adult Nexa, their scales darker, movements almost mechanical. The defending Nexa roared, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling. It was wounded, fluorescent blood seeping from multiple gashes, but it stood its ground. As Sarah watched, it caught one of the attacking Nexa with a savage blow, sending it crashing into a bank of computers. "Commander," Taurus hissed. "Orders?" The protocols were clear. The Nexa were to be eliminated on sight. No exceptions, no mercy. The fact that they were fighting each other didn't matter. The children didn't matter. 15 years of fear and hatred had written these rules in humanity's blood. But Sarah saw something in the defending Nexa's stance, in the way it positioned itself between the attackers and the children. Something impossibly, undeniably human. "Cover me," she said, and stepped forward before Taurus could object. "This is Commander Chen of the United Earth ship Mercy." Her voice rang out, echoing off metal walls. "Stand down." The fighting stopped. 6 pairs of alien eyes turned to her, 3 filled with mindless rage, 1 with desperate intelligence, and 2 young ones showing nothing but fear. The defending Nexa made a sound, not a roar or growl, but a series of clicks and whistles. A language it was trying to communicate. One of the attackers lunged, not at the defender but at Sarah. She had a split second to register that its movements were wrong, too jerky, too artificial, before Taurus' team opened fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, catching the attacker mid-leap. It crashed to the ground, and Sarah saw something that changed everything. Where the plasma had burned away scales, there wasn't flesh. There was metal. "Hold fire," Sarah commanded, mind racing. The other 2 attackers turned toward her squad, moving with that same jerky motion. Not Nexa at all. Machines, weapons. The defending Nexa seized the opportunity. Moving with impossible speed despite its wounds, it struck both remaining attackers with devastating precision. Metal crumpled under its claws, sparks flew, and then there was silence. Sarah kept her weapon raised as the Nexa turned to face her. Blood dripped from its wounds, its breathing labored. The children whimpered behind it. Slowly, deliberately, the Nexa lowered itself to its knees. It placed its claws on the ground and bowed its head, exposing its neck, the universal gesture of submission. "Commander," Taurus warned, "the protocols." "Look at them, Major," Sarah cut him off. "Really look." The children were pressing themselves against the wounded Nexa, chirping in distress. The adult's massive clawed hand, capable of tearing through metal, gently stroked their heads, trying to comfort them. Sarah had seen monsters in her career, had fought them, killed them, lost friends to them. This was not a monster. This was a parent protecting its children. She holstered her weapon. "Commander," Taurus protested. "The protocols were written because we thought we knew what the Nexa were," Sarah said, taking a step toward the kneeling alien. "I don't think we knew anything at all." The Nexa raised its head, meeting her eyes. There was pain there, and fear, but also something else. Hope. "I am Commander Sarah Chen," she said clearly, placing a hand on her chest. "We're going to help you." The Nexa responded with a series of gentle clicks and whistles. One of the children, braver than its sibling, crept forward to peer at Sarah with luminous eyes. "Major Taurus, call in medical support. Full quarantine protocols." Sarah didn't take her eyes off the Nexa family. "And get me a secure line to command. They're going to want to hear about this." "They'll order us to terminate," Taurus said quietly. Sarah watched as the adult Nexa gathered its children close, sheltering them despite its obvious pain. "Then we'd better come up with a very good reason why they shouldn't." As her team secured the lab and medical personnel rushed in, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead. She had just violated humanity's most stringent security protocol. She would be court-martialed at best, possibly charged with treason. But looking at the Nexa, at the parent willing to die protecting its children, at the mechanical monstrosities that had attacked them, she knew she had made the right choice. Something much bigger was happening here. The Nexa weren't the monsters humanity had feared. They were victims of something far worse. And Sarah had just placed herself, her crew, and her career between those victims and whatever force had created those mechanical hunters. The price of mercy, she reflected as she helped the medical team approach the wounded Nexa, might be higher than she could imagine, but some prices had to be paid. Blood and honor. The isolation ward of the UES Mercy hummed with tension. Through the transparent barrier, Sarah watched the medical team work on the wounded Nexa. They moved cautiously, every gesture measured, while the massive alien lay perfectly still despite what must have been considerable pain. The 2 children huddled nearby, watched by armed guards who looked increasingly uncomfortable with their duty. Dr. Patel approached, her dark eyes troubled. "Commander, you need to see this." The doctor led Sarah to her workstation, bringing up a holographic display of the Nexa's internal scan. "Look at these implants," she said, highlighting several areas in the alien's brain and spine. "They're unlike anything I've seen before. The integration with the neural tissue is perfect, almost organic." "Some kind of control system?" Sarah asked, remembering the jerky movements of the mechanical attackers. "No," Platel shook her head. "These are different, more sophisticated. They appear to be limiters of some kind, specifically targeting areas associated with aggression, higher reasoning, and memory." She looked up at Sarah. "Commander, someone has been modifying these beings at a fundamental level." Before Sarah could respond, her comm unit chimed. "Commander," Lieutenant Rivera's voice was tense. "Priority message from Fleet Command." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Put it through to my private terminal." Admiral Kane's hologram materialized, his expression stormy. "Commander Chen, you have exactly 1 minute to explain why you haven't executed the Nexa quarantine protocols." "Sir, the situation is more complex than we realized. The Nexa we encountered was protecting children from mechanical attackers. They appear to be victims of—" "The Nexa are not victims, Commander. They are a threat to humanity's very existence. Your orders were clear." "Admiral, we found evidence of neural manipulation. Someone has been controlling them, modifying their—" 60 hours, Kane cut her off. "That's how long it took the Nexa to wipe out New Sydney Colony. 8,000 civilians. Men, women, children. Are you familiar with the footage, Commander?" Sarah stood straighter. "Yes, sir. But these Nexa are different. The adult is showing protective behavior, communication attempts. And the children." "You have 6 hours to execute the protocols, Commander. If you fail to comply, the UES Vigilant will be dispatched to handle the situation, and you will face court-martial for violation of direct orders." The hologram vanished. Sarah's fist clenched. The Vigilant was a destroyer, capable of reducing the Mercy to atoms. The threat was clear. A commotion from the isolation ward drew her attention. The adult Nexa had risen, moving with a fluid grace that belied its size. It approached the barrier, the children closed behind. Dr. Patel gasped. "Commander, look at the readings. The neural patterns, they're stabilizing." The Nexa pressed one massive hand against the barrier, its eyes, golden and intelligent, fixed on Sarah. Then it began to speak, not in clicks and whistles, but in halting, accented English. "Thank you. For mercy. For children." Each word seemed to cause pain, but the alien pressed on. "Must warn. They come. The masters. Make us weapons." Sarah stepped closer to the barrier. "Who are the masters? Who did this to you?" "Ancient ones. Take young ones. Make them perfect killers." The Nexa's voice grew stronger, clearer. "Failed with these. Too much independence. Ordered terminated. Could not allow." The pieces began falling into place. The mechanical hunters, the neural implants, the massacres. "The attacks on human colonies," Sarah said. "That wasn't you, was it?" "Not really." Controlled. Pushed. Made to. The Nexus massive frame shuddered. No choice. But these ones, it gestured to the children. Made different. Better. Free. Dr. Patel was frantically taking notes. "Commander, the neural activity. It's like watching someone break through programming. The limiters are failing." A warning klaxon blared. "Commander, to the bridge." Lieutenant Rivera's voice was urgent. "On my way." Sarah turned back to the Nexa. "What's your name?" The alien seemed surprised by the question. "Keris. She said after a moment. "I am Keris." "We'll talk more soon, Keris. You and your children are safe here." As Sarah hurried to the bridge, her mind raced. 6 hours. She had 6 hours to either execute beings she now knew were victims, or face destruction at the hands of her own people. And somewhere out there, these masters were no doubt hunting for their escaped experiments. The bridge was chaos when she arrived. Report. Multiple contacts, Commander, Rivera said. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL. Configuration unknown. The tactical display showed 3 vessels, their design unlike anything Sarah had seen. They moved with an organic fluidity that reminded her of the Nexa. They're hailing us, Mason reported. Sarah straightened her uniform. On screen, the being that appeared was humanoid, but ancient. Its skin was like polished stone, eyes deep pools of swirling energy. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that made Sarah's teeth ache. "We are the architects," it said. "You have something that belongs to us. Return it, and you may live." Sarah felt cold anger settle in her gut. These were the monsters who had enslaved the Nexa, turned them into weapons, ordered children terminated for the crime of being too independent. "I'm Commander Chen of the UES Mercy," she replied, letting steel enter her voice. "We don't recognize your claim. The beings aboard this ship are under our protection." The architect's expression didn't change, but the harmonics in its voice grew darker. "You do not understand what you protect, Commander. The specimens are part of a greater design. Their freedom threatens the balance we have maintained for millennia. The balance of enslaving other species, of turning children into weapons. Progress requires sacrifice. The strong must guide the weak. You have 6 hours to return our property, or we will take it by force." The transmission cut off. Sarah turned to her crew, saw the fear and determination in their faces. They had all heard Keris's story, had seen the children, had realized that everything they thought they knew about the Nexa was a lie. "Orders, Commander?" Mason asked quietly. Sarah smiled grimly. 6 hours, the same deadline as Fleet Command. Someone was going to be disappointed. "Get me a secure channel to every independent colony and free trader in range," she ordered. "Then prep the ship for combat. If the architects want their property back, they're going to learn something about humanity." "And the vigilant?" Rivera asked. "Oh, they'll have to wait their turn." Sarah settled into her command chair. "We're about to make history, people. The question is, will we be remembered as the ones who helped enslave a species, or the ones who helped set them free?" The bridge crew straightened, pride and purpose replacing fear. They had signed up to explore the stars, to represent the best of humanity. Sometimes that meant fighting monsters, and sometimes it meant protecting those who had been labeled monsters by others. As her crew prepared for battle, Sarah thought of Keris and her children, of the strength it must have taken to break free of mental conditioning, to protect the young ones marked for death. If humanity could show even a fraction of that courage now, perhaps there was hope for both their species. The price of mercy was growing steeper by the minute, but Sarah Chen had never been one to take the easy path. She had 6 hours to change the course of galactic history. It would have to be enough. The hunt begins. The stars blurred as the UES Mercy executed another emergency jump, its engines straining against physics itself. Sarah watched the tactical display, counting down the seconds until their pursuers would appear. They hadn't lost the architect vessels yet, but they hadn't been caught either. A game of cat and mouse played across light years. "Hull stress at 82%, Mason reported. "We can't keep this pace much longer, Commander." In the medical bay, converted now to a secure shelter, Keris and her children huddled with Dr. Petel. The doctor's voice came through the comm, tense but controlled. "Commander, you need to see this. The children, they're changing." Sarah's attention split between the tactical display and the medical feed. On screen, she could see what Patel meant. The young Nexa scales were shifting color, patterns flowing like oil on water. More concerning were the energy readings emanating from their bodies. "It's like their cellular structure is evolving," Patel continued. "The changes seem linked to their emotional state. When they're afraid, the energy output spikes." A new alarm blared. "Contact," Rivera shouted. 3 architect vessels bearing 040. "Evasive maneuvers," Sarah ordered. "Engineering, ready for emergency jump on my mark. But before they could act, a new voice filled the bridge, ancient, resonant, impossibly deep. You cannot run forever, children of Earth. The specimens must be returned. The pattern must be maintained. The architects had somehow breached their communications firewall. Sarah felt a chill as the voice continued. Your species is young, undisciplined. You do not understand the forces you meddle with. The Nexa were created to serve a purpose. Their evolution must be controlled. Created? Sarah's mind raced. You made them. We improved them, as we have improved countless species, as we will improve humanity when you are ready. In the medical bay, the young Nexa suddenly screamed, not in fear, but in rage. Energy readings went off the scale. Keras roared, the sound carrying even through the ship's internal barriers. Commander. Plato's voice was urgent. They're implants. They're not just failing, they're being rejected. The children's bodies are literally pushing them out. On the tactical display, the architect vessels were closing in, their weapons charging. They had the Mercy surrounded. Sarah had seconds to make a decision that would affect not just her crew, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. She opened a channel to the medical bay. Keras, can you hear me? I need to know, what are your children capable of? The Nexa's voice was clearer now, stronger. They are what we were meant to be. Before the Masters changed us. Pure, unbound, they are the future the architects fear. As if in response, the ship's sensors went crazy. Energy cascaded from the medical bay, readings unlike anything Sarah had seen before. The children's screams changed pitch, becoming something that made the air itself vibrate. All hands, brace for impact, Sarah ordered, though she wasn't sure what impact they were bracing for. The energy wave that erupted from the medical bay passed through the ship's hull like it wasn't there. Sarah watched in awe as it reached the architect vessels. Where it touched their organic-looking hulls, the material simply unraveled, like watching evolution in reverse. By all that's holy, Mason whispered. The architect's ships were disintegrating, their once perfect forms breaking down into component elements. The voice returned, but now it held something Sarah never expected to hear from such ancient beings: fear. You don't understand what you've unleashed, it said. The pattern must. The transmission dissolved into static. In the sudden silence, Sarah tried to process what she'd just witnessed. The children, the failed experiments, had just destroyed 3 ships of supposedly godlike beings with nothing but their inherent abilities. Status report, she managed. Architect vessels. Gone, Commander Rivera said, still staring at his screens. Just gone. But I'm detecting multiple new contacts at extreme range. More ships incoming. Commander Patel cut in. The children are unconscious but stable. Keras is, well, you should see this yourself. Sarah hurried to the medical bay. What she found there stopped her in her tracks. Keras stood over her children, but she had changed. Her scales shimmered with the same fluid patterns as the young ones, and the last of her implants lay on the floor like discarded shackles. They showed us the way, Keras said, her voice now smooth and clear. What we were before the architects tried to make us their weapons, what we can be again. She turned to Sarah, her eyes now swirling with the same energy they'd witnessed. But we need time and help. The architects will send more ships, Sarah said, and the Vigilant is still coming. We're running out of options. Not options, Keras corrected. Time. My children showed us the architects can be beaten, but they're not ready to face an armada. They need time to recover, to grow stronger. And our people, all our people, need to know the truth. Sarah's comm unit chimed. A message from Fleet Command scrolled across her screen. Kuewantain protostiolas violated. UES VIGLANTETA 380 yours. Stand down and PRE for boarding. Sarah looked at the unconscious children, at their transformed mother, at her own crew who watched her with trust and determination. They had just witnessed both the greatest threat and the greatest hope for galactic peace. The architects weren't invincible. Their control wasn't absolute, but proving that to humanity and the rest of the galaxy would require something more than just military might. It would require trust, understanding, and most importantly, time. Lieutenant Rivera, she called over the comm, plot a course for the Outer Rim, specifically the Free Colony territories. She turned to Karis. I know some people who don't much like being told what to do by higher powers, people who might be interested in helping a revolution. The colonies will be watched, Mason warned. Yes, Sahara agreed, but they'll be watching for a military vessel. She smiled grimly. They won't be watching for a cargo ship, especially not one that officially doesn't exist. You would give up your career? Karis asked. Your life? I swore an oath to protect humanity, Sarah replied. Sometimes that means protecting humanity from its own fears and prejudices, and sometimes it means helping those who were wrongly called our enemies. She opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the commander. What we've discovered here changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. The architects have manipulated species for millennia, turning them against each other, controlling their development. Today, we have a choice. We can submit to their pattern, or we can help break it. She paused, letting her words sink in. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttles. No judgment, no repercussions. But if you stay, understand that we're about to go to war with beings who think themselves gods. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, one by one, her crew responded. Engineering standing by, Commander. Medical ready. Security team in position. Bridge crew at your command. Not a single person asked for a shuttle. Sarah felt pride swell in her chest. This was humanity at its best, not fearless, but choosing to act despite fear. Not perfect, but willing to admit mistakes and try to correct them. Plot course for the Free Colonies, she ordered, and someone find us a cargo ship. We have a revolution to start. As the Mercy prepared for its most dangerous mission yet, Sarah watched Karis tend to her children. In them, she saw the future, not just of the Nexar, but of all species the architects had tried to control. A future where evolution wasn't directed by self-proclaimed gods, but by the choices and connections species made for themselves. The hunt was truly beginning. But this time, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Allies in the dark. The Free Colony of Haven lived up to its reputation. Nestled in an asteroid belt at the edge of known space, its ramshackle collection of interconnected habitats and repurposed ships represented everything the Earth government feared: independence, diversity, and most importantly, a complete disregard for species segregation laws. Sarah stood at the viewport of their borrowed cargo vessel, the Ghost Runner, watching as ships of various designs moved between the asteroids. Human vessels flew alongside alien craft, some familiar, others completely unknown. This was where the outcasts of a dozen species had found refuge from their respective governments' control. Quite a sight, isn't it? Captain Maya Rodriguez, that Haven contact, grinned as she guided their ship through the maze of asteroids. The former Free Colony pilot had agreed to help them blend in, though Sarah suspected she had her own agenda. Welcome to the last free port in the galaxy. Behind them, Karis watched the scene with intense interest, had transformed scales, shifting colors in response to her emotions. The children, recovered from their display of power, pressed against the viewport with unmistakable wonder. Haven control to unidentified vessel, a voice crackled over the comm. State your business. Maya leaned forward. Haven Control, this is Captain Rodriguez on the Ghost Runner, bringing in specialty cargo for the Shadowkeeper. There was a long pause. Verified, Captain. Follow beacon to Dock 7, and tell your cargo that the payment better be worth the risk this time. Sarah raised an eyebrow at Maya, who shrugged. The Shadowkeeper runs Haven's information network. If anyone can help spread the truth about the architects, it's them. She hesitated. Just Don't be surprised by their appearance. They're a bit unique. The docking procedure was smooth, despite the seemingly chaotic nature of Haven's traffic. As they secured the ship, Sarah noticed something odd about the other vessels nearby. Many showed signs of recent combat, scoring from energy weapons, hastily repaired hull breaches. The architects have been busy, Maya explained, following her gaze. More ships arriving every day, all with similar stories. Mysterious attackers, ancient vessels, entire colonies going dark. She led them toward a heavily modified section of the asteroid. The Shadowkeeper's been collecting these reports for months. Your evidence might be the key to understanding why. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each staffed by a different species working in perfect cooperation. Sarah noticed how they reacted to carers, not with fear, but with a kind of wary respect. Word had clearly spread about what happened to the architect vessels. The Shadowkeeper's sanctuary was a vast chamber carved into the heart of the asteroid. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing news feeds, ship movements, and data streams from across the galaxy. But it was the chamber's occupant that drew everyone's attention. Well, the being said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. This is certainly interesting. The Shadowkeeper was unlike anything Sarah had seen. It appeared to be a collection of crystalline structures floating in a containment field, pulsing with internal light. Tendrils of energy reached out to interface with the surrounding technology. A crystalline, Keras breathed. I thought your kind were extinct. That's what the architects wanted everyone to believe, the Shadowkeeper replied. Just as they wanted the galaxy to believe the Nexar were mindless killers. The crystal structure shifted, forming patterns that somehow conveyed amusement. But we're all here, aren't we? The failures, the experiments that went wrong. The ones who wouldn't stay in our assigned roles. The children moved closer to the containment field, their scales resonating with the Shadowkeeper's energy patterns. The crystalline being's light pulsed in response. Fascinating, it said. The next stage of Nexar evolution, free from the architect's influence. And it turned its attention to Sarah, a human who chooses to help rather than fear. Perhaps there's hope for this cycle after all. Cycle? Sarah asked. What cycle? The Shadowkeeper's crystals rearranged themselves, projecting a holographic timeline into the center of the chamber. The architects have done this before, many times. They find promising species, guide their evolution, set them against each other, and when civilization reaches a certain point, the timeline showed galaxy after galaxy going dark. They harvest them, Maya finished. Take the best traits from each species, incorporate them into their own form, and start over. But this cycle is different, the Shadowkeeper continued. For the first time, multiple species are breaking free of their conditioning simultaneously. The Nexar children represent spontaneous evolution. The crystallines survived our supposed extinction. Humans. It turned to Sarah. Humans were meant to be the next generation of enforcers, replacing the failing Nexar. But you've proven remarkably resistant to manipulation. Because we're stubborn? Sarah asked. Because you're adaptable, Keras interjected. The architects value control, predictability. Humans. She gestured at the diverse crowd of species coexisting in Haven. Humans build things like this. You connect, change, grow in ways the architects can't predict. The Shadowkeeper's crystals pulsed in agreement, which is why they're moving faster than ever before. The attacks, the increased aggression. They're trying to force a harvest before they lose control completely. Sarah felt the weight of this revelation settle over her. How long? Based on the data we've collected, months at most. They're already positioning their fleets, activating dormant control systems in multiple species. The Shadowkeeper projected a map of known space, highlighting multiple fleet movements. But we have something they don't expect. The children, Keras said softly. And this, the Shadowkeeper added, revealing a new hologram, a complex sequence of energy patterns, the key to their control systems, extracted from your children's successful rejection of the implants. With this, we can free other species from the architect's influence, but we need a way to broadcast it across all of known space simultaneously. The Galactic Communication Network, Maya suggested, every species uses it for faster-than-light communication, which is heavily controlled and monitored, Sarah pointed out. Not all of it. The Shadowkeeper's crystals sparkled with what might have been mischief. The architects built the network, yes, but they use human technology as a base. And humans have a lovely tradition called backdoors that the architects never quite understood. Sarah began to smile. You're saying we can hack the entire galactic communication network? With the right team, the right moment, and the Shadowkeeper turned to the Nexa children, who were still fascinated by its crystalline form. The right power source. No, Keris said immediately. They're just children, who have already proven they can affect architect technology on a fundamental level, the Shadowkeeper countered. We're not asking them to fight, simply to share what they naturally are, the pure, unmodified energy of your species' true form. Sorrow watched the children playing with patterns of light, their scales shifting in beautiful, impossible ways. They didn't look like weapons or tools. They looked like the future. A future where species could evolve naturally, connect freely, choose their own paths. We'll need a distraction, she said finally. Something big enough to keep the architects busy while we work. The Shadowkeeper's crystals formed what was unmistakably a smile. Oh, Commander Chen, look around you. You're in a port full of ships crewed by beings who've all been hurt by the architects. I don't think finding volunteers for a revolution will be difficult. Maya was already working on her comm unit. I know some captains who've been itching for a real fight, and a few Nexa who escaped the control systems might be very interested in some payback. Sarah looked at Keris, who nodded slowly. The children will be protected. With everything we have, Sarah promised. She turned back to the Shadowkeeper. How long to prepare? A few days to gather our forces, set up the broadcast, the crystalline being replied. The real question is, are you ready for what comes after? Once we do this, there's no going back. Every species in the galaxy will know the truth. Sarah thought about everything she'd learned since finding Keris and her children, about the lies that had kept species apart, the manipulation that had turned them against each other, about humanity's role in it all. The truth is, she said finally, we should have done this a long time ago. The Shadowkeeper's crystals pulsed with approval. Then let's go crash the architect's harvest. I hear revolutions are a human specialty. Around them, Haven hummed with growing energy as word spread. Ships began powering up, crews making preparations. The outcasts and rebels of a dozen species, preparing to stand together against beings who thought themselves gods. Sarah watched it all, standing between Keris and her children, and a being she'd once thought extinct. This, she realized, was what the architects truly feared, not any one species' evolution, but the connections between species. The unpredictable, beautiful chaos of truly free beings choosing to work together. The hunt had changed. Now they weren't just running from the architects. They were hunting for freedom. Revolution's dawn. Haven's central command center buzzed with activity as representatives from a dozen species coordinated the largest unauthorized fleet in galactic history. Sarah stood before the tactical display, watching as hundreds of ships moved into position. Merchant vessels retrofitted with weapons, sleek pirate raiders, retired military craft. A patchwork armada of the unwanted and overlooked. The architect's main fleet is gathering at these coordinates, Maya reported, highlighting a sector near the galactic core. Our scouts confirm at least 30 capital ships, plus support vessels. They're preparing for something big. The harvest, the Shadowkeeper's crystalline form pulsed. They know they're losing control. They'll try to salvage what they can of this cycle before full revolution breaks out. Keris moved to Sarah's side, her transformed scales rippling with determination. The Nexa children sat in a specially prepared chamber nearby, their natural energy being carefully channeled into crystalline matrices the Shadowkeeper had designed. The fleet is only part of their strength, Kara's warned. The architects have sleeper agents in every major government, controlled through implants like the ones they used on my people. When we begin our broadcast, they'll activate them all. Then we'll have to be faster, Sarah said. She turned to address the gathered representatives. Everyone knows their roles. The fleet will engage the architects' ships, keeping them distracted while we access the communication network. The moment we begin broadcasting the deactivation signal, every controlled being in the galaxy will start fighting their programming. That's our window. A small window, Maya added. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll throw everything they have at us. Which is why we'll hit them from multiple directions. Sarah highlighted different sectors on the map. The Free Colony's fleet will engage their main force here. Resistance cells we've contacted on major worlds will strike at their ground installations here, here, and here. And most importantly, she smiled grimly. We have friends in unexpected places. On cue, a new communication channel opened. Admiral Kane's familiar face appeared, but something was different. His eyes were clearer, more focused. Commander Chen, he said, his voice carrying none of its usual hostility. The Vigilant and her battle group are in position. The architect's control of a fleet command wasn't as complete as they thought. Quite a few of us have been, waiting for an opportunity like this. Sarah nodded. She'd taken a calculated risk reaching out to Kane, showing him the evidence they gathered. The Admiral had surprised them all by revealing that a significant portion of Earth's fleet had been quietly preparing for this moment, suspicious of the increasingly irrational orders coming from above. The next few hours will determine the future of every species in the galaxy, Sarah addressed the gathered forces. The architects have controlled us through fear and manipulation, turning us against each other while they harvested the best of what we could be. Today, we show them something they've never understood, the true strength of free beings choosing to stand together. A chorus of affirmative responses came from the assembled representatives. Ships began moving into jump positions. In their chamber, the Nexa children's energy patterns intensified, resonating with the Shadowkeeper's crystals. They're ready, Karis said softly. But Sarah, the energy required for a galaxy-wide broadcast, it could harm them. Sarah met the Nexa's eyes. That's why we have a backup plan. She nodded to Dr. Patel, who had been working frantically with a team of xenobiologists from various species. We've studied the children's energy patterns, Patel explained. Their power comes from pure, unmodified Nexa biology. But they're not the only ones who've broken free of the architect's control. She gestured to Karis. You've changed too. If we link you into the broadcast matrix, you can help share the load. Protect them. And I won't be alone, the Shadowkeeper added. There are more of my kind hidden throughout the galaxy. We've already linked our crystalline networks. We'll help channel and amplify the signal. Warning alarms blared. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Maya reported. Architect vessels, at least 50 of them. They know we're here. All ships, battle positions, Sarah ordered. Admiral Kane, begin your approach. Maya, get our people to the broadcast station. Karis, she turned to the Nexa. Are you ready? Karis moved to join her children in the chamber. For my people, for all people. The first shots were fired as the architect fleet engaged the gathered resistance. Space lit up with energy weapons and explosions. The Haven fleet moved with surprising coordination, smaller ships darting between the massive architect vessels, while converted freighters launched waves of fighters. Broadcast station secured, Maya reported, beginning power-up sequence. In their chamber, Karis and her children began to glow, their scales shifting through impossible colors as they channeled their energy into the Shadowkeeper's crystals. The ancient being's form pulsed in harmony with them, and across the galaxy, hidden crystallines activated their networks. Multiple impacts, someone shouted. They're targeting the broadcast station. Fleet command vessels engaging, Kane reported. Keeping them off your back, Commander. Make it count. Sarah watched as the energy readings climbed. The Nexa children were pouring everything they had into the broadcast, their mother's presence helping to stabilize and direct the flow. The Shadowkeeper's crystals blazed with light as they began to interface with the Galactic Communication Network. They're trying to shut down the network, Maya warned, activating override codes now. This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. Lieutenant Rivera, execute Operation Backdoor. Across known space, hidden programs embedded in the network's human-designed components activated. The architects had never fully understood the human tendency to build secret ways into their systems. Now that oversight would cost them everything. Network locked, Rivera reported triumphantly. They can't shut us down. Broadcast power at maximum, the Shadowkeeper announced. Commander, it's time. Sarah took a deep breath. Send it. The energy wave that pulsed out from Haven was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It carried within it the pure, unmodified potential of the Nexa, amplified by the crystalline network, transmitted through human-designed backdoors. Everywhere it touched, the architect's control began to break down. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every species felt the wave pass through them. Implants failed. Programming shattered. Truth, long buried, rose to the surface. The architects' ships began to falter as their controlled crews broke free. Their ground installations went dark as sleeper agents awakened to their true selves. And in the midst of it all, their true forms were revealed. Not gods, not ancients, but parasites who had survived by stealing the potential of others. Energy spike, Maya shouted. They're trying something. The largest architect vessel was powering up what looked like a massive weapon, but before it could fire, a familiar voice came over all channels. I don't think so, Admiral Kane said calmly. The Vigilant and her battle group emerged from FTL directly behind the architect flagship. You've controlled us long enough. The combined fire of Earth's most powerful warships, joined by newly freed vessels from a dozen species, tore through the architect command ship. As it died, it broadcast one final message. You don't understand. The pattern must be maintained. No, Sarah replied, though she knew they couldn't hear. We understand perfectly. We're choosing a different pattern, our own. The battle raged for hours more, but the outcome was never in doubt. Without their control systems, without their ability to turn species against each other, the architects were revealed for what they were. Powerful, yes, but not invincible. Not gods. Just another species that had chosen domination over cooperation. In Haven's broadcast chamber, Keris held her exhausted but triumphant children. The Shadowkeeper's crystals dimmed to a steady glow as the network of hidden crystallines powered down. And Sarah Chen, once a commander sworn to uphold humanity's fears, now stood at the center of the greatest revolution the galaxy had ever seen. What now? Maya asked quietly. Sarah watched as ships from different species began coordinating cleanup efforts, sharing resources, helping the injured without regard for all divisions. Now, she said, we build something new, together. The price of mercy had been high, but the reward, true freedom for all species to choose their own path, was worth every cost. The revolution's dawn had broken. What came next would be up to all of them. The price we pay. 3 months after the Battle of Haven, Sarah Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. The chamber, hastily constructed from an old trading station, held representatives from every known spacefaring species. Former enemies sat side by side, their differences dwarfed by the shared experience of breaking free from centuries of manipulation. The last architect's stronghold fell yesterday, Sarah reported, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. Their technology is being dismantled, their control systems destroyed. But, she paused, meeting the eyes of various representatives. We face a greater challenge now, learning to live with true freedom. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah watched as humans debated with Nexa. while crystallines shared insights with species that had once hunted them. It wasn't perfect. Centuries of prejudice and fear couldn't be erased in 3 months, but it was real. Genuine interaction without the architect's influence. Keris, now a representative of her freed people, stood to address the council. Her scales shimmered with complex patterns that reflected her eloquence, a trait of natural Nexar evolution that the architects had tried to suppress. "We all bear scars," she said, her voice strong and clear. Physical, mental, cultural. The architects didn't just control us, they shaped how we saw ourselves and each other. Breaking their technology was the easy part. Breaking free of their legacy, that is our true test. In a specially shielded chamber adjacent to the council room, the Nexar children played with others of their kind, young ones who had been hidden away, protected by parents who had somehow broken through their conditioning. Their natural abilities were growing stronger, but now they were learning to use them constructively, helped by the crystallines who had survived their own supposed extinction. The Shadowkeeper's image appeared on the council's main display, its crystalline form representing thousands of its kind who had emerged from hiding. "We've completed our analysis of the architect's database. Their manipulation of our species goes back further than we imagined. They didn't just control our development, they actively prevented us from forming lasting connections with each other. They knew that together, we would be stronger than they could ever be." "Which leaves us with a choice," Admiral Kane added. He had become an unexpected ally in the aftermath of the revolution, working tirelessly to reform Earth's military approach. "Do we try to return to what we were before their influence, or do we build something entirely new?" Sarah stepped forward again. "I've seen what we can accomplish together. At Haven, species that were supposed to be enemies fought side by side. We won not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because we chose to trust each other, to help each other. That's what the architects never understood about humanity, about all of us. We're at our best when we connect, when we grow together." "Pretty words," a council member called out. "But some of us still remember the wars, the attacks. The architects may have pulled the strings, but the blood was real." "Yes," Keris agreed. "It was, and we must acknowledge that pain, not hide from it. But we must also recognize that we were all victims, all used. The question is, do we let that define our future?" Sarah watched as her words sank in. She saw the moment of choice ripple through the chamber, representatives looking at former enemies with new understanding. The architects' greatest weapon hadn't been their technology or their control systems. It had been isolation, keeping species apart, afraid, unable to share their experiences and strength. "I have a proposal," Sarah said into the thoughtful silence. "We've discovered hundreds of worlds that the architects held in reserve, perfect for colonization. Instead of dividing them among species, what if we built something new? Joint colonies, shared worlds, places where our peoples can learn from each other, grow together." "Impossible," someone muttered. "Different species have different needs. That's what the architects wanted us to believe," the Shadowkeeper countered. "But look at Haven. Look at what we've already built here. Different doesn't mean incompatible. It means stronger together." One by one, representatives began to signal agreement. Not all, there were still doubters, still those who clung to old fears. But enough. Enough to start something new. As the council session ended, Sarah found herself in the children's chamber. The young Nexar were teaching others how to channel their natural energy, while crystalline mentors helped them understand their growing abilities. It was beautiful, watching them interact without fear or prejudice. "They're the future we fought for," Keris said softly, joining her. "Not just my children, but all of them. Free to grow, to learn, to become what they're meant to be." "Was it worth it?" Sarah asked. "The price we paid." Keris looked at her friend, and it was friendship, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "You lost your command, your career, your place in the military you served so faithfully. And gained something greater," Sarah smiled. "We all did." Maya appeared at the chamber entrance. "Hate to interrupt, But we've got an interesting situation. A new species just made contact, out on the rim. They're asking about the architects, about why the Galactic Communication Network suddenly started broadcasting the truth. Sarah and Karis shared a look. This was the real test, not just breaking free of the past, but building a better future. Showing others that there was another way. Tell them we'll meet them, Sarah decided. All of us. Show them what real cooperation looks like. As they prepared to welcome a new species into their changed galaxy, Sarah thought about the price of mercy. She had risked everything to save 2 children and their mother. That choice had sparked a revolution, freed countless beings, and opened the door to a future the architects had tried to prevent. Some prices were worth paying, some changes worth fighting for, and sometimes the greatest victory wasn't in winning a war, but in proving that there was another way to live. The architects had tried to write the story of the galaxy, but in the end, they had failed to understand a simple truth: the best stories aren't written by gods or masters. They're written together, one choice, one connection, one act of mercy at a time. And this story was just beginning.